We all know that there's something missing in the world. We all seem to think that this world has gone crazy. And a lot of us are looking for answers. Black folks are looking for our aunties and our grandmamas to bring us some wisdom. But what about Black men? Every village needs every griot, every provider, every protector that we can get in male form. We're going to talk about it today with a very special guest. Welcome to We Are Your Aunties. I'm Paige Means Hopper. Let's go.
Hey, Auntie.
Great morning, everybody. Hi, aunties. How are you doing this morning? Uh-oh, wait a minute. We got everybody on mute over here. Okay, y'all are off mute now.
Okay. I am doing great.
Awesome. And we have a very special guest with us this morning. Oh, we're so super excited. We have Miss Ruby Shivers with us.
Pen.
And she just lost her pen, but she's going to get it back again. I know she is.
I found it.
She is the author of a very special book.
Always cute when you're trying to be cute. See?
You know what? You couldn't help but be cute. Come on now. Quit playing, as Auntie Genoa would say. But we just are so excited. We want to welcome you to the show with your very special book, Ode to Black Men. Why Shouldn't I Cry? An Ode to Black Men. Oh, this is an incredible book. But you know what? It's only one of 5. She's written 4 others. Her first book was Tired, Trite, and Tasteless Expressions That Keep Us Damaged. But then she retitled that Verbal Healing, which speaks volumes, right? And then her second book is called Victims of Confusions. And it's about how to break free from confusion and release the negative baggage that's holding you back from reaching your goals. Her third book is called The Quarters, and it's tales of everyday life from birth to death and everything in between. And then her fourth book, Emotions to Live With, Let Go, Let God, is a book in which she causes us to look through the mirror of our souls to accept all of our emotions as relevant. This lady has lived a life. She continues to live a very full life. As a matter of fact, I met her in New Jersey, the New Jersey, New York area. We went up, Michael Hopper, my husband and I went up to present on a panel. And the panel was about communications between Black men and Black women. And y'all know that's our specialty, right? Right. We had a blast there, but I got to sit next to and absorb a lot of wisdom from Miss Ruby. So Miss Ruby, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you grew up, and how you came into this work for such a time as now.
Okay, well, first of all, I am just so thrilled, so excited to be with you guys, be with the aunts, our sisters. I just love Paige, when you came. I knew we just kind of clicked because your book was just so much appropriate for what my thoughts are today. Everybody hasn't picked up on them yet, but yours is just right on time. So I will say good morning, and good afternoon, depending on where you are. You know, you're all out there in sunny California. It's still morning, and I'm in New Jersey in the afternoon. But you know, really, it's surprisingly nice today. The last couple of 2 or 3 days been rainy. But it's a beautiful sunshine that's sprouted out this morning. So I'm pleased, very pleased for that. But I'm so excited to be here. And of course, like you say, I'm Ruby Williams Shivers, your unapologetic amateur looking for experts. Now, Paige, what I did, you saw my promo, I have on there, I'm an unapologetic amateur looking for expert, but I added something else on. I added in experts in Africanism. Because I think I was getting people a little bit confused when I said experts and left it there, because there's a lot of us are experts. We got a lot of experts out here. I tell everybody I'm an expert, but I was talking about experts in a particular genre, blackness, an expert in Africanism, and I'm an expert. I'm an expert in being black, because I be black every day.
I love that.
I know everything about black. But I'm not an expert in black. I live it every day, but I'm not an expert in black living. And it's the difference between living black and black living. Black living means that you have to know the ins out and the rounds and about, or what happened to us from the time we were brought over here from that. Well, not even before that. We are the original people. So you kind of got to know all that. Then what what happened when we was kidnapped and brought over here. After being kidnapped, we're going through that middle passage, know what that did to us. Then when we was hoisted up on those slave ships, sold, separated from our families. Got to know that. You got to know what happened then after that, the kind of treatment that was put upon us. Got to know how we were stripped. Now, these are the two different things in the average slave. We were stripped of everything great to us, our religion, our history, our science, everything was stripped from us. And also,
yes, we're going to get into that a little bit more, but really what I'm looking for at this point is personally, who are you? Where did you come from? What was your upbringing? What got you started in there?
Right, I'm coming from all that. I start off that way because I want people to know without that, we can't determine who we are now. When I tell you that I'm a Southern girl, came from the segregated South, then you will know why I am in the mindset that I'm in, because I know that other stuff. So I was born in Lake Butler, Florida, a little hamlet, or very southern town, segregated town, and went to school there, graduated from high school, and then came, quote, north. That's interesting too, because I'm going to talk to you about a couple of weeks ago. I went back to Lake Butler, Florida, where I graduated from. We were celebrating celebrating the history of how that was prior to segregation. So we came back a couple of weeks ago to celebrate the time from when I left to now. And when I returned to New Jersey, we unveiled our African heritage. Now, how do you like that? So it was such an association from where I came from, which was the slave landing of my ancestors, to back to where I learned about my heritage. Aside from that, I was always a very conscious young lady, even when I was in Lake Butler, Florida, as a youngster. And I tell this story often about how I began to understand who we were when I was a youngster, about 15 years old, and I was sent away with my church, always send the young ones away to the conference, Sunday school convention. Yes. We were sent away this particular time, me and three of my cousins. And we always would go, and there would be conversation around whatever the topic was at the time. But because we were young, we kind of wasn't that interested. So we would go there because we was obligated to go, and we would try to find someone who might be able to take our notes while we out there looking for the boys.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. See, now we're getting to the good
stuff. This particular time, the subject was COVID prior to integration. That was in the wind, integrating and all. So the subject was, are we ready for integration? Now we were in, there was a group of youngsters from a larger town than we came from, Gainesville, Florida. So that we called them the city girls, and we were the country bumpkins. So what happened when we would get into that situation, we were kind of quiet back and not say anything. Right. But when that subject came up, are we ready for integration? it just kind of hit a nerve for some reason. I sat there and I listened, and I stood up, never spoke in my life, very shy person. I said, "Are we ready for integration?" And the young lady answered. She said, "Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't be able to speak properly. We wouldn't know how to eat. We wouldn't." Oh, she went a list of things that we wouldn't know how to do. And I stopped. I said, "Really? Are you suggesting that we who were enslaved we would have to measure up to someone who had slaved?" And I went on. And when I sat down, there was I will never forget, two young ministers. They were twins, but they were young, and we was impressed with them. But at the time, I wasn't doing it for that reason. I was just doing it because it hit me. And so they started clapping. Yeah, they started clapping. And I knew then I had said something. We left that convention with me knowing that I had to speak up for something. So that's how that started, really.
That's powerful.
And my second book then, right. And so I've done a few things like that down there. I thought it was what they call it, a rebel with a cause. And I was doing things that was good. I tell you, I was doing things that were disturbing my parents, so they knew they had to send me,
and especially, I'm sure there was a challenge for them, because I mean, you say in your book on page 126, the 50s in my own time. And so, that gives us an indication that you were here even earlier than that. And so you mentioned Brown versus Board of Education. And so you saw those things from a perspective that many of us did not. We see it from a perspective of reading it in a book. You were there. And in your book, you break it down into 4 different parts. You talk about the essence of the situation with Black men. You talk about the revelation, the explanation, and then why shouldn't I cry? Yeah. Why shouldn't I cry? You also talk about
contact.
Yes. And I have so many questions, but I wanted to first start out by asking you, what is it that caused you to write this particular book? You've written 5. And to me, this one reads for me like a memoir. It does touch on historical context.
Yeah, because I understand the history behind why our men were not allowed to cry. Not only our men, women also, but particularly our men. And when there are things that affected them in any way, well, starting from slavery, actually, you were not allowed to cry if you saw your mom being raped or your dad being hanged, or whatever the case may be. You were not allowed to cry. We knew the history of that. I didn't see that that was something I didn't see. But vicariously, I always understand and can feel what's going on in our situation. So we were not allowed to cry. And then when you look at this situation that's going on now, and everybody having celebrations, not just celebrations, but things that will remind them of situation that happened. There was 9/11, and we'll sit, we call off the names, and we'll cry, and we'll be so mournful and sorry. Those are the kind of things that kept hitting me and say, if you can cry for that, which is good, because you should, then if we are not allowed to cry, that must be affecting us mentally and physically. So that's how I begin to put that together and say, well, why shouldn't we cry? Why shouldn't we remind ourselves of the situation of our history? Why shouldn't we remind ourselves of slavery? Don't allow people to say that was then and this is now. That's still going on in our mind,
Oh, and not only our minds, but our entire DNA, in fact.
Exactly.
So you were saying in your book, you said, while this book was written to highlight the torturous past of the Black man and the impact that slavery inflicted upon unsuspecting people, it also reflects my thoughts as a mother relative to the Black man in the 21st century. I think that's so powerful and so timely that you would have this message as a Black woman, as a grandmother, as a gatekeeper for not only your community, but for this work. In my opinion, a gatekeeper for this work, and a griot, a storyteller. You have all of those things wrapped up in one. I also recognize that I'll let you tell us the 3 components that you think that we need to start to unravel some of the damage that's been done and begin our healing. What were those 3 components again?
Well, first of all, we got to recognize who we are and what we are. You know,
Okay.
and no shade on anybody, it's just what it is. I call myself an unapologetic amateur for a reason. So we can clarify. We need special people like any other thing that have happened through our lives that has been drastic in our lives. And there's never been anything more drastic than slavery. Because I don't even like the word slavery anymore. I want to redefine it. I know we have Ma'afa, that's a good definition, and genocide, but it probably needs to be something even more succinct, because what has happened to us is that we get confused when we say slavery, and everybody else to grab us and say, well, there have been slavery in other places. As a matter of fact, they say you enslave yourself. Well, not what we
Interesting.
went through. There has never been anything in the annals of history to compare, not even to compare what we went through. I was just listening to a show the other day on Moses and that situation, the Egyptian slave. Nothing to compare. So not even on our history, but in biblical history, there's nothing to compare to what we went through. So having said that, then we have to know that there are, in my book, as I said, there are three voices that we kind of have to always be attentive to and listen to. One is the amateur, like myself, the amateur. I know a lot and I do a lot, and and the expert and the antagonist. Now, see, I say amateur because I will defend. Hey, you heard me. I will stand on any box.
And
I'll
toes
stand
down.
on any box and defend. But that's just about as far as I can go. But there are the experts who not only can defend, they can define. They have gone through the roots of it. You're one of them pages. You are, because your book tells it all. Healing the wounds of slavery. See, that's just not a title. That says, I recognize that there's a wound that needs to be healed, and it has to do with slavery. When you can do that, then you got it all. You have done it all. But there's some of us think all we need to do is just know what happened.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there were other forms of slavery. A lot of people want to point to the Asians, and definitely Steven Spielberg and other Jews in Hollywood will never let us forget the Holocaust. And so you're absolutely right. So why should we not recognize what we went through and the form of slavery that we went through? It was exacerbated by the horror. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I was really speaking to also. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No. What I'm saying is, we can acknowledge that there was slavery. We can acknowledge that maybe we did enslave each other, because that's just what it was. Sometime when you overthrow wars or whatever. But what we went through were not slavery. That was Ma'afa. That was genocide. That was something so different that we shouldn't even compare. That's why God has given, I tell everybody to laugh. I say God is using me as he used Moses. Now that may be just a little hyperbole, but it's true. I don't know.
Because Moses didn't think he was worthy. Moses did not think he was worthy. Why you come get me? I'm the least of. So I can think that God is you because he gives me examples. When I wrote my book, I wasn't quite sure how to articulate it. I tried to get through. Like yours, it was not as defined as yours. My title was not. I can see straight up with all the ins and outs. Mine was not quite. So God comes to me and gives me examples. I'm one here, so I'll give you an example of how to explain what you're trying to say to someone. And guess what happened, Paige? My book came out the day. My book came out the year the pandemic came out, 2020. I had just started. And what happened? My book was released. I had set up a book signing. We had to cancel because of the pandemic. But God came to me and said, I want you to use that pandemic as another way of explaining your situation. And what I mean by that is, when I tell people that I need experts to get through the bottom of what we went through, and they're going to say, well, anybody can be an expert. No. We didn't say that when that pandemic came through. Right. Say that pandemic came to over 2 million people. We were looking for somebody who we knew. We didn't go to the celebrities. We didn't go to the sports figures. We didn't go to we didn't even go to the president of the United States, because he was the most powerful man in the world at that time. But guess what?
Right.
He told us to inject bleach. So we know we didn't.
Well,
We needed experts who had studied that stuff and was
right.
prepared to at least give us some information from their expertise. That
Well, you know what's interesting about that? What's interesting about that is that we did have experts. We absolutely had experts. And what we noticed is that our experts started dying off suddenly by mysterious causes, as they always do when they fight the status quo, and when it's about diminishing the powers that be, like the pharmaceutical companies and all of those. And, you know, and then people will be canceled. Oh yeah, we absolutely have experts. And one of the things I enjoy that you say often is the 3 points, or the 3 points of contact that you believe we need in order to reverse this healing are historians, spiritualists, and I don't mean like voodoo and all that. No, I mean people who believe in the true and living God and can go to God for answers, and then psychologists. Yeah, exactly. But what I love about this book, Miss Ruby, if we bring it down from 10,000 feet in the air and just bring it down to the heart of the matter, what I love about your book the most, I have to tell you, is the acknowledgement of the Black men in your own personal life. I think that's what's really missing for a lot of Black men, is just to have someone. Respect is number one, and acknowledgement as to who they are and how they stand within our lives. And I think every family should definitely have a book like this from their family historian, or as you call yourself, the amateur, but you're also the griot of your family. And it's very clear because you recognize that as you were going through, and ladies, I would love for you to jump in here at this point when I finish telling her how much I love this part of her book. I love how when you were going through a very difficult situation in your life, probably the most difficult situation you've ever been through, your husband was passing away. And all of these men that you mentioned in this book came to surround you, support you, give you love, and love on him, and create a sense of village. Let's talk about
the village concept.
Let's talk about it. And so that, and when your book reads like a memoir to me in that respect.
Yeah, because I want us to know there was a beginning to this ending that we see. You know, we find ourselves in a position to think this is the end of us. No, it's not, because there was a beginning. And the more I hear, I always kind of knew it on the side, but I've been hearing it more often now about how we were the first God's creation, coming from him. You know, so that's why I guess I depend on him so much, because it's just a connection. It's in the DNA. If he birthed us, if we were the first birthed people on the planet, the Africans, that's what I keep hearing. And I love to hear it, because that gives me a sense of why I am so connected to him. Someone asked me a page of not too long ago, they said, when did you have this conversion? I say to them, when did I get converted? And I said, when you grow up in a segregated South, you don't have a conversion, you have a continuum. Early on, you get a connection with God and you don't let go. You keep him forever close to the vest. So he gives me these examples by which to explain myself to my people when I don't seem to have the answer, because some of our people are still misunderstood about the situation they're in. They'll say, well, it's my fault, I don't do this, or you just making excuses. All that stuff that we've been taught about against ourselves, and we reverberate. You know, as in my book, verbal healing, that's part of what I talk about.
So how do you, because both ladies on this screen with us have raised sons, Black men in America. And so I would love for each of you, starting with Auntie Rose, if you would tell us what was the name of the
sister. I have a sister who named Rose.
Oh, what a blessing. I would love for Auntie Rose to tell us What was one of the main ingredients, or what was one of your main tactics or tools or instruments or whatever, words, whatever it was, your method for raising such an incredible Black man as Daniel?
You know what? God was first and foremost. You know, we took our problems, our hearts, everything to God. That was number one in our household. And we stressed education. We stress positivity, you know, positive life moments that we can share and to give back to the community. That was another thing.
Wow.
To, you know, to reach and grab someone and say, yes, you can do it. It was just helping and giving of yourself. That was the main thing that we did. But if I can ask a question,
Sure.
to Ms. Ruby,
Please.
you know, with the movement of the civil rights movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, especially with our men, what type of feedback were you getting from those generations? Because, you know, with my son, I noticed that, you know, he's, you know, with the Black Lives Matters and, you know, but it's a different generation from it was with the civil rights.
It is.
So our men, I feel, outside of sports and celebrities and different things, they don't get the credibility that they need. That's why I uplift. That's why our family uplift us and respect us. So that with that question, I would love to put an answer from you with that.
Well, that, you know, I think now I'm tempted to say Rose, but I know you weren't Rose. What, your name again?
It's
Genoa.
Because Rose stuck in my mind.
Well,
Your
Rose
name?
is right. That's her name is Rose.
Yes.
Oh, I'm speaking to Rose now. Oh, I thought so.
Yes,
Okay,
Auntie
Rose.
Rose.
You know what, Rose? You right. It is generational in a way, but it's also because we haven't cleared our minds as to the real reason that we're in the position we're in. Period. See, the way I understand it, when we were, I say we were not far out of slavery. We were still connected to the reality of who we were, although they had stripped us, but we somehow had not been brainwashed. And I use that word, and my dear friend Dr. Calfani challenged me one day. He said, it's not brainwashing, it's brain dirtying. So they dirtied our brains, right? Dirtied our brains to the point, but by that time, we kind of knew the deal. We weren't as far removed from knowing who we were, although they had stripped us. But as it came on down the line to where our children are today, many of them have not read a book on their history, let alone knowing their history. And if they read it, they don't believe it because there's people out there that's telling them that's then and that was then and you need to get over it. So we have a lot to we owe them a lot. We don't understand it. We don't realize it. Sometimes we think it's them, but actually we have to understand that they are much further away from reality than we are. So they got caught up into what the system is continuing to give them now and doubling down on it. So they are more confused today. I understand that more of our young Black people are committing suicide. Now, you know, we didn't know that was not even in our community, suicide.
The numbers are now, so high right now. Yeah.
Yes. And you wonder why? Well, that's because they are so much further away from what we knew, you know, as African people, although we were abused and stripped and all that, but we at least held on to something that we knew about. These young people sometimes don't know a thing, and they challenge you because there's all kinds of social stuff out there that creating stuff in their mind that's not true.
Right.
And it's demeaning to them. When George Floyd, that just touched my soul so much. We get back to why we cried. When that happened to George Floyd, and he sat there and cried for his mom on his deathbed, that said everything.
On
That
the
said the
concrete
depth of our man.
jungle
On the concrete,
floor.
yeah. That said the depth of our young men particularly, and women too now, but our young men particularly are going through. I just feel just so terrible for what we can't do for them. But I
Well,
feel
you know
good
what?
though that we are coming around with your book. It's nothing more, it's nothing better. That's why everyone should pick this book up. Really. Not trying to promote it. It's just that I really wish
Get this
you
one.
pick this book, Healing the Wound. Right. Healing the Wound. Because we have wounds, our young people. I'm doing a memoir. I'll talk about that later on my youngest son who passed.
I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
well, you know what, Miss Ruby? This is what happens when our narrative has been hijacked and we don't know how to take it back. I raised a son. My son, he's in his early 40s now. He was in the service. He was a very bright young person, and the thing that kept Black people and especially my family in a good space is the Lord, having going to church, teaching them good Christian values, and then affirming him. I had to keep him busy because his mind was so sharp that if I let him have an idle moment,
that's the mind of an African son. Remember, that's the mind of an African son.
He would get in trouble, and he would cause everybody around him to get in trouble because he would lead them into trouble. That's what he did. And I had to keep him busy. He was always complaining, but I told him, I said, "You will thank me later," because I think he had two children, him and his sister, the third one. And before they opened their eyes up in the morning time, I had to already be about 9 steps ahead of them. 9 steps ahead of them. And the thing was, I tried to he had the fathers, because I wasn't in the church. I went to church, but I wasn't in the church when I got married. So I didn't have my husband wasn't in the church or anything, but I still instilled in my children godly values. We went to church, Sunday school. I prayed with them in the morning. I prayed with them and for them in the morning. We had devotion. If we was fasting, they were fasting. They were mentoring other small children in school. My children were. They were mentoring other children. And my son at nighttime, because he was the oldest, after everybody was put down for the day, I would sit on the end of his bed and me and him would talk. So he could talk and have that conversation. And so, because the thing is, you can't squash down what God puts in them while they're children, because they won't have nothing to make it when they leave your house later in life.
That's right. So how do you build that up in them, Genoa, especially given, like, I know I can tell you the 10 wounds that I talk about in this book, right? Because a lot of people, even though they think that it's going to be economics or politics or science or some other thing that's going to help us come through the healing that we've been through. But if those things, or education, some people harp on that, and those things are all good. Don't get me wrong. Those things are all good. But if those are going to be the things that bring us through the healing on the other side to actual health, and then to flying and soaring into the full power of who we are as Black people, the original Black people, the original people on the face of the earth. And I have proof from God himself in this book. But I want to tell you what's on my mind as you're speaking, each of you, about raising Black men in America, because no matter how well we raise them, even, the aunties, the cousins, the extended family, the grandmothers, everyone in the village is contributing and pouring in. But as long as we're under fear, contained rage, jealousy, self-hatred, damaged belief systems, under and overachieving, doing twice as much to get just as far, or not doing anything at all. The mental illness that's so heavy that we're going to have a brother on here in the next couple of weeks. I believe it's going to be on next week. There'll be an announcement. He is a Black psychotherapist, a Black male psychotherapist, which is rare. I'll tell you why. But then the grief, the brokenness, the death, over and over and over, under barrage of death and murder. and then the
Yeah.
masking and pretending. When you're
Yeah.
raising children, and particularly Black men, because Black men were always a threat, because they went and
Always.
they made the mistake on their part of going to get the most powerful, as Auntie Janelle was saying,
Yes.
the most brilliant, the sharpest. But even against that grain of the wounds, they're able to survive. But then how do we help them to thrive and break through? Because we see the men carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. They
Yes.
just care because on one hand they're told, oh, you need to be the protector and the provider. On the other hand, they're told by a system that was devised specifically for their demise, that there's no way
Yeah.
you're going to be able to do this, because we're going to compress and oppress and depress you to the point where you can barely come from underneath that. And I wasn't going to bring it up, but since we're on the topic of that, you know, and we always talk about current events. So, Miss Ruby, on the show, what we do is we go from the historical context and we connect the dots to the current cultural construct, and then we talk about how we're going to come out of this. And one prime example of how all these wounds are so compressed into one individual right now, if we just look at one Sean P. Combs.
Yes.
P. Diddy.
Well, you know, P. Diddy. I see that the same as I saw the situation with Bill Cosby.
Oh, come on. Can we talk about it?
You know? Yeah, can we talk?
Can we talk?
There is a connection that only experts. See how I passed that off?
Yes, I do see how you passed that. Don't worry, I got a ping pong paddle over here too.
That are experts. You know what I'm saying? They're going to have to come to us and say, Ruby, look, I know you're the amateur, but I know you have ideas and I know you need answers. So let me tell you what I'm going to do as with this virus. When that pandemic came along, it was so uniquely different than anything we had seen in the annals of history. So out of there, killed so many people. So we knew that it wasn't going to be me, you, or anyone else that could handle that to any degree. So we knew we needed experts. When you see a P. Diddy Combs and a Bill Cosby, and even a what is that, Clarence Thomas, when you see them floating around in our community, you know, they are outside somehow. They have been pillaged with all kind of craziness that have not been dealt with to now. And so when a person like P. Diddy get that kind of finance and keep that kind of money behind him and get
power,
all the bling blings and the white women and all that kind of stuff that they throw
the white women.
And they throw on our men. Well, you know, let's be real.
Let's be real.
When they do that, they did it for a purpose.
Yes.
That's to get our men to start acting like they're men. Because P. Diddy is not acting no more different than Trump. And Trump is running for president. You see what I mean?
running around grabbing women's parts.
Tell me about it. So he's taught P. Diddy a little something, maybe. So what I'm saying is no excuse. Again, like I said, I use in my book, we don't use the word excuse for us, because excuse is when you have white privilege. You don't have to do all this stuff because in your head ain't been, you know. Explanation is when you're born from a slave situation, because it comes down, like Paige says in her book, somewhere in her book I was reading, I think it's page 62, where this stuff that's going on in our lives has connection to what happened to us over 200 years ago. Until we can deal with that and can realize that from that perspective, we're going to have these P. Diddy's running around like crazies. You know,
well, you know, at the beginning of each year, I sit and I reflect and I ask God for a word for the year. And that word has never failed me to come to fruition and manifest in the world. And he always shows me how that word is affecting people. And the word for this year, as I sat down, it was actually two words, but it started with truth. The word for the year was truth. And then as we got into February, he came back and added on exposure. truth and exposure. And sure enough, look around us right now. All of this dirt, the underbelly of the filth that got created by that peculiar institution is being unearthed and brought to the surface. And so when we look at a P. Diddy, we're not necessarily looking at Sean P. Combs. We're not necessarily looking at Bill Cosby. We're not necessarily looking at R. Kelly. What we're looking at is a phenomenon of what occurred to our Black men as a result of what remains in their DNA from the institution of slavery. But now the question becomes, because as you say, Miss Ruby, and I totally agree, I had to squeeze your hand on the panel when you said this. You said that it is not an excuse. Their behavior is inexcusable. However, there's an explanation behind it. And when we have such low self-esteem, we've been beaten down so low, we're expected to be up high as a pillar of our village, but yet we don't have the capacity to do that. Then we will self-medicate. And one of the ways that we self-medicate is with material things. 5 sports cars, a huge mansion for 2 people, all the trappings, and I call it trappings on purpose, because it traps us from the duty, our responsibility of going and digging down into these roots and finding out exactly what's our demise, what's causing us to be under this kind of pressure. Now, with the men, it has always been, this is interesting, the prize of Black men in many instances, I will never throw a blanket across all of it, but in many instances, particularly with our entertainers, particularly with our sports figures, and those who are in power, political power and influence in this country, often have a white woman on their arm. Why? Because she is a trophy. She is his way of saying, I have fully assimilated into this culture. This is what this is a symbol of me. This is what represents me in this country. This is my face forward to the rest of y'all who haven't quite made it. And all of that is a symbol. All of that is a symbol of, in my opinion, it's a false symbol of power and privilege, is what it is.
And
I can tell you what we're dealing with.
Go ahead, Auntie Genoa.
Go on.
And I can tell you what we're dealing with, because I can thank you this morning. We're dealing with arrested development.
Oh, well, that's a whole other show.
It's arrested at young ages. So we're dealing with...
Explain what arrested development is for our audience members who don't know.
Arrested development is when some sort of trauma happens to you at whatever age you are in your life. And even though you might still age as you live, you don't grow past that point where the trauma happened to you. And what we're looking at is an arrested people that we're adults, but we're adult children that haven't grown. And so when you add the trappings and you add money, you add everything, it's like a child living this good life and don't know what to do with it, because the Bible says that when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I understood as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. But how can you put away childish things when you've never grown beyond the point where you were arrested at?
And how can you become a man if you don't have men around to model and demonstrate that for you? And the majority of our men are where? And I wanted to add one more point to what Auntie Genoa was saying. That's an excellent explanation of what arrested development is. And a picture that you can take with you in your mind is handing the keys to a Ferrari to a 3-year-old. And not to say, now we want to be very clear. We will never, ever on this show or any other platform we're on, we will never, ever say that, we're going to debase the victim or debase the one who went through the trauma. And when I say victim, it's not in the sense of making an excuse or saying that we're weak. But when you look up the word victim and know its etymology and where it comes from, you understand that when something happens to another person that they did not cause themselves, it is called a victim.
And we shouldn't hesitate to say that. We shouldn't even think we need to make excuses to anyone for saying it, because they understand it clearly. And if they continue to have us trying to explain it and make an excuse, they think we don't understand it. No, victim, we are victim, we're victim. And we need to say that loud and clear. A victim is someone who's been put upon, who's been unfairly treated, whatever the case. Now, if you can't think of slavery doing that, then I don't know what else we could think of to define a victim. So we can't even for a minute allow them to back us up to a point where we will be hesitant to call it like it is. Because our young people watching all that too, because sometimes they don't even understand it to the degree that they are victimized. Some of them will tell you, "No, I'm not a victim." Well, they don't know. They don't know what 200 years of slavery could do. It's a continuum. Yeah, it's a continuum. It didn't just stop when they what they did with that.
With the Emancipation Proclamation, right.
Oh no, it didn't stop there. It continued through your DNA, through your bones, to whatever else you carry around with you, and it's going to continue to do that. Unlike that pandemic, until you get some of us who have all the knowledge of what we need to do, the faith-based, the historian, and the psychologist together to get that stuff and say, "I got a cure for you. I got a vaccine for you." I got a vaccine for what ails you. And well,
you know what's interesting is that a vaccine is injected, right? The vaccine is injected. But what I say, what I feel and what I know based on experience and research, and mostly revelation, is that more than more injection, there needs to be a purging.
Right.
How do we get that hurt out of our hearts? How do we get that hurt out of our hearts? How do we get that hurt out of our hearts? We're really good with our heads. Inject the love. But where's the love going? Okay, so I hear you. And we do need more and more and more love to help the injection go where it needs to go. Exactly. And if there's toxicity, which there is toxicity,
cleanse it away.
Cleanse it and then put the love. Because here's the thing. I was in a cohort. I don't know if I told you this. I may have told you this at the event. I'm not sure, but our audience is, should be privileged to know that I was in a room with newly minted psychologists. They'd just gotten their doctorates in psychology. And their professor, who was mentoring them, called me in to just show them a little bit about what's in the book. And so, as I said, there are 10 main wounds, but I only started with the first 3. I think it was fear, contained rage, and jealousy. And I went in and I told them basically what I know. Like you said, in that room, I felt like an amateur and they were the experts. But it turns out, long story short, at the end of that session, each and every one of them was crying. And I asked, why are you crying? Their mentor asked, why are you crying, with tears in her eyes? And what it was that they felt, first of all, they felt cheated because they had spent all of this money and all of this time searching the minds of human beings to find answers that only dwell in the heart. Because we are a communal people, as you have said, Miss Ruby. We are a communal people. We are built on village. We are built on supporting one another. We are built on coming together in unity. But how come we can't do that? Why? Because it is still in our DNA, how we were broken down as families, how we were broken down as communities, how our language, our names, our structures were broken down deliberately. And what happened is it didn't affect our minds so much because we're so freaking brilliant. We know we're sharp because we can make something out of nothing like that.
Come on now.
But what we don't address is the broken hearts that are still existing. And until we fix that, we can forget about some real unity. We'll be coming together as backwards magnets. You know how two magnets, you try to put them together and they keep pulling apart? That's what we're facing now. And so when your book and your other books, and when you speak, the medicine begins to heal that heart because you care. One of the things you told me is that with Governor DeSantis and all the things that are going on with the way the history books are being pulled off the shelf and they want to reinvent and reimagine history and all that. One of the things that you're doing that I think is so precious, Sister Ruby, is you're taking a group of young people. See, this is how it starts. One person, one little group. You're taking a group of young people, I believe you told me weekly, and you're teaching them about their African history, not just African American history, as it is that. We won't even go there, Black history, but you're starting from the roots and reminding them who they are. And what did you say earlier? Someone says it's brainwashing. Somebody says it's brain dirtying. You're removing that dirt.
Dr. Calfati from Lexington County College says that.
That's so important. And so for this last few minutes, we only have a few minutes left. For this last few minutes, what I would like for each of us to focus on. I know, goes fast here in the Auntie Show. What we'd like to focus on is what we can do about it, because there's so many people who know what the problem is. I've been reading for over 20 years, all the experts, the archaeologists of our history, the so-called experts, that, as you say, and they are all brilliant. But you get to the end of their books and you're wondering, okay, where's the good part? How do we heal this? And it's not there. Why? Because they don't know.
That's what's missing. That's what's missing. See, that's minus the expert. I'm not gonna call in a name, but I tell you that I heard you mention too that someone you had admired so seriously, and somehow it didn't come through with the answer that you thought. I had this person. I mean, I hold him up to high regards. He was one of the greats as far as I was concerned. And I was going to get him on my show, and I talked with him. I finally got contact with him, and I said to him, "I'm looking for an expert. I'm considering him." He said, "Well, why would you need an expert?" Or no, he didn't ask that. He said, "Anybody can be an expert if they know their history." And I said, well, "Excuse me, I don't know." And this amateur wasn't about to debate with him. I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "I know history of the virus." I said, "But nobody came to me to cure them because I couldn't do that. I just know the history." I said, "So you would have to know a little bit more." And he said, and then we left it that because I wasn't going to debate it with him. But I'm saying to you, even some of our so-called experts, maybe we haven't gotten there yet. There's no shade on them because they just got to get there. He probably just never thought about it, but there's more than your history. You got to know then how to give me a cure. When you can come up with some solutions, then you can consider yourself, you came up with, so you say healing the wounds of American slavery. So it means that you must have thought through and figured out some ways. One of the ways Ruby has figured out, this is just one, so I know I need more than that to be an expert, but one of the ways is reparation. They start giving us our reparation, we'll be cured a whole lot then, because we can do with that reparation what we can't do without money, because you can't do a whole lot of stuff without money. And I don't mean cash money. I mean in goods and services. Somewhere like they did their own. When they came out of World War I and II, they created these villages and all this stuff because they know their people needed that. We came out of slavery and don't have anything, not even the 40 acres and a mule. No, we need reparation, and that will keep us. We don't need affirmative action. We don't need all that other stuff that they claim that they're giving us, and it's all ours because we worked for 200 years plus. Still working for free. So
right. Well, we weren't expected to. We weren't expected to exist 2 days to a week out of slavery. And my concern, my only concern with reparations is this: along with those reparations, prior to receiving those reparations, we also need financial education, because otherwise,
no money. Right, you're right.
Okay.
No, please. We deserve money to give it to us to put away.
I don't mind having my money.
But if we had it now, who are we going to spend it with? The same people?
That's right. Because we're uneducated.
So that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Well, we need goods and services the same way they got goods and services after World War One. We need free schooling. We free housing. We need free
health.
Free health.
Free health
So
care.
we got those. If we got those, then if we put out the money, don't give us no cash money, because if you give us cash money, I gotta go spend that.
She said no cash money.
Right back into their pocket. Save that cash money. We still deserve the cash money, but put it away. A group of our people who we trust say we're going to put it away somewhere. In 10 years, we're going to have all those goods and services.
This is a whole other conversation, and we're about to wrap. And I'll tell you what. So to find a group that we all trust, that's going to be that's an interesting conversation. But we just wanted to make sure that people know. We want to make sure people know where to find you. And so I've asked Sheila, if she's still with us, to please put your contact information in the comments. But where can people find you? Tell us about your podcast. What day? What time? How can they get there?
Okay. Thank you, Paige, because I always forget to promote. My podcast is I'm an unapologetic amateur looking for experts, Ruby Shivers. And I come on every Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can get me on Facebook. You can get me on YouTube. You can get me on BKS1 Radio and Instagram. And please watch, because we got to get this message through. You know, I come on every day saying, truth crushed to the earth will rise again. That's the good thing. But then there's a scripture that says, my people will perish for lack of knowledge. We don't want that to happen. And not just any knowledge, because we do get a whole lot of knowledge, but I mean true knowledge. So my podcast is basically about bringing people on that's going to bring the truth. So just please watch. And I'm just been so thrilled with you, Paige, here. And I can't wait for Monday. Paige is going to be on my podcast Monday coming up. Looking forward to it.
Oh, that's gonna be a good one. I'm excited for that. Very excited. But we want to thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have you back, because we just scratched the surface here. We're going to definitely have you back for part 2. And we just want to thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for being here. You have brought us such love, such sunshine, such joy, and such a sense of community and village, and just being the griot that you are. We're just honored, and we want to acknowledge that we believe that you're not quite the amateur you think. But I understand that. But you are such an expert in love. You're such an expert in family. You're such an expert in community, and it's just been a delight to have you.
Yes.
Ladies, did you have any final words from the group?
Well, I want to bless you, ladies, because I'm just excited to have been able to talk with you all. You all just keep doing what you're doing, because we got to keep it up, you know. And we know we women are, like I say, I wrote the book about men, but the same with what I do, give credit to us, because we've always been the one that undergirded our men. And we need some undergirding sometime too. So we're going to get it.
That's right. Aunties?
Oh, it was a pleasure meeting you, and just full of knowledge and the community like Auntie Paige was talking about. Thank you so much.
And
I'm looking forward to you coming back, because
thank you.
There's some stuff I need to know.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot more where that came from. Yes.
Anytime. My pleasure.
And so, ladies and gentlemen of our audience, we thank you so much. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your comments and your love. And we'll see you back again here next week. We are your aunties. Remember, you can tell us anything, but there's a way to say everything. And until next time, we love you. If nobody else has told you that today, know that we do. Bye.